And so before we dive into tonight's topic, which is, of course, to talk about what everybody who is a comics fan, I think, is talking about, whether they loved it or hated it, was the opening of The Batman. Do want to mention that if you want to join the conversation, if you are watching this live, certainly feel free to make comments throughout, and I'll share those that appear pertinent. And I see one or two have joined, so thank you. But if you'd like to join the conversation after the fact, of course, you can follow us on Facebook. Maybe you're watching this on Facebook Live right now. You can follow us on the YouTube channel, though that's just videos. Follow us on Twitter at Fanboy Planet, Instagram at Fanboy Planet. And of course, if you have any questions, comments, compliments, commentary, criticism, write in to editor at fanboyplanet.com. And
someday I want you to give one of the URLs as Shirley's House of Delight,
I don't want to say that. I don't know. I don't know where that leads. I don't know where that would lead. But to nowhere good, Rick.
Or very good.
No, excuse me. I'm going to run a banner across so you remember this. Use your powers for good, Rick. For good. Okay. Anyway, yes, anything that we talk about that you may want to purchase for yourself and can legally, Rick, then, we each and every page on Fanboy Planet does have Amazon links, and we are affiliated with Amazon, so that if you click on a link on the page that perhaps you're watching this on the fanboyplanet.com page, or through the search box or recommended products box on fanboyplanet.com, it may generate a small bounty / piece of revenue, whatever, for Fanboy Planet. So thank you for any there. But that is, of course, if you can't find it at your local brick and mortar store, because I really, obviously, we started out in a comic shop. I'd like to support comic shops everywhere, even though neither of us are anywhere near that comic shop anymore, though I hear it's doing quite well. But I'm elsewhere. So let's get to it. I did, after I came out of The Batman, I did tweet out really more to celebrate that I had made it without a bathroom break, because it is a long film. But I also felt that partially that, the sheer rush of adrenaline for having achieved that was that this is the best live action Batman film. And I didn't qualify that it was live action. And someone did join in the conversation and say that it was pretty good, but the Lego Batman is the best Batman movie. We'll get to that. We will get to that. And yes, so your own comments don't count, by the way, Rick. Oh, no, that's a private chat.
That was a private chat, sir.
Anyway, let's talk about the Batman. And we are talking about it right after you yourself have freshly seen it. You went to a matinee as a man of leisure.
Matinee that ends at 5:30.
Yeah. And now you're here. So you have less than, I think I've got like 72 hours. It's been sitting with me or more. You have less than an hour, really, once since the lights came up. So let's go with it. Your gut reaction after having watched
my first impression of the film has little to do with Batman and more about the film, because we've always commented on how much darker, not physically but brilliantly darker, the DC movies are. That they're usually more desaturated colors and darker in lighting, and this took that to a whole new depth.
All right. And before we go further, we have a comment, and I just want to make sure. Brian Ken says he still hasn't seen it yet. So, we'll try to be fair and spoiler. I know you're not. I just wanted, I wanted to call it out, so that I'll try my best to be mindful of it. Anyway, continue.
So I was going to say, takes the darkness even lower. I mean, it was dark. I don't think anybody sells light bulbs in Gotham City. It's all lit by virtue of fireflies that are 15 feet away from me.
Excuse me, I have to make a note for that title. No one sells light bulbs in Gotham City. You know that would have been a 70s, Denny O'Neil Batman story.
Right. But this not only took the darkness down.
You couldn't even see Killer Croc there.
No.
That's actually not a spoiler. I'm just saying.
It's like that It's like that observation about about Judo Master being everywhere in the Peacemaker opening. It's
Yeah.
like there were all kinds of guest stars you didn't see because they were all in the shadows. But
Yes.
not only
Yes.
was it dark, but they added out of focus through a large part of the film and obscured by water on the lens in much of the film too. There's so much rain and other water in this film.
It does
Uh,
feel like a sweaty film, and I don't
it's
mean that as a negative necessarily. It is just
yeah.
very,
Yeah,
it's
the
moist,
the
if you
the
will.
impression was nobody ever cleans anything in this city. Even the people who have money, their houses don't look like someplace you'd like to spend time in.
Well, and I think that's what was interesting to me. My reaction, even while watching it, was this feeling of this is definitely a Batman for our time in a way that I don't think the Snyderverse, because already you're seeing people say the Snyder, it owes everything to the Snyderverse. No, being
Mhm.
dark isn't Zack Snyder's
He didn't
trademark thing.
he didn't invent that.
It's called film noir, and it's been around since what, the 30s. Anyway, certainly since black and white film, but that that whole thing about, and many of the comic stories delve there too. Gotham is a city falling apart. That's really part of even Tim Burton's Batman. The only time Gotham City has been shiny was when it was on Saturday mornings on ABC with the Super Friends, if they ever showed Gotham City. I think one of them, I know one of them did, because the Scarecrow took Adam West back to Crime Alley, and he had
Oh,
to relive. It's the first time that the murder of Thomas and Martha was portrayed on screen. Was actually Challenge of the Super Friends, which is really bizarre to me. But anyway, so it's been shiny up until that point. That I think Tim Burton and it was Anton Furst was the designer of Gotham City in that Batman '89, as we affectionately call it. But I do feel that right now, even though this, it was filmed largely during the pandemic, and I know I talked to other people in cities around the world, and not just world events this week, but this feeling like things are falling apart, it's crumbling, it's decaying. It is very clear that Gotham City cinematically is always like a nation state unto itself,
right.
because no government is interfering with anything going wrong, whatever. So always remember, as we talk about the Batman, no matter how much you might wish otherwise, it is a fantasy film, and yet this feels very real for 2022.
Oh,
And
way too real for 2022.
in a
Some
lot of
stuff
ways.
you kind of wonder when was the script exactly written, and social media does not come off well.
No, and I'd say that but to also say is I think many more people are waking up to social media and its dangers, if you will. But they've been there for a long time. So, I've heard some criticism, and not to get deep, but there was nothing about the social media aspect of this film that I found unbelievable. Not a single piece of it.
Way too scarily believable.
Way too scarily, but absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And, but one thing I want to call out at the top, I don't think this is a spoiler, but I really appreciate it. And this is the difference between this and the Snyderverse for anyone who, if you appreciate those films, great. I'm not here to debate that. But this is the first time on screen in the 21st century, and actually, again, since Adam West, Batman has not killed. And they actually make a point that Batman will not kill.
There were a couple of times where, again, it was dark.
It was dark. I'm not going to say, but it makes a point of that. And even Batman '89, as much as I love Batman '89, there are plenty of takes out there on YouTube and articles on different sites that can call out that Batman actually has a higher body count than the Joker does in that film. If you really think about the consequences of his actions. Whereas throughout this, from the beginning, he will maim. It's like Doc Savage in the early novels. He will seek to disable or maim. It's disable, but never maim or kill. And he might have maimed a couple up top,
Yeah,
but
I think there were a couple of rage situations where I
but
was surprised that the person could talk afterwards.
but that he calls it out, and this is an arc, and I know we won't be the first to have observed this. This is a Batman that has an arc beyond we just want to see the bat signal turn on. Like, every piece is there from the beginning. There is clearly this is rare for kind of what's not an origin film, but a setup of he's been at it. This is year 2.
This is they actually say, Gordon says, I've known you for 2 years and you still won't tell me who you are. So this is the beginning of year 3. He's still getting his footing.
And there's an implication. I'm sure it's all over the place, but there's an implication that he has fought a major villain before, and we didn't see it. But we have seen the consequence in the film. And again, I'm trying to just be kind of, non-spoilery about it. We'll probably stop the broadcast and talk about it afterwards. But it's
sorry, kids.
No, but it was really interesting, and my wife and I both had a lot to talk about all day long after seeing it, because we kept coming back to how something was great. Though I do feel like I'm not going to go back to a theater to see it. In 41 days now, it will go on HBO Max, and thank God I have HBO Max. I immediately wanted to rewatch it, but I want to be able to stop and savor.
Yes.
And because this is going to be a film that rewards repeat viewing, just as Tim Burton's did. I've watched Batman Begins a couple of times, but this one just feels like there's so much going on that now that I've seen it, I want to catch how much was laid throughout it. And and really and just appreciate the artistry. My God, as you say, it may be dark, but it's beautifully framed and beautifully shot.
I have a different reason for wanting to watch it at home, and that is because I did feel that some parts of it dragged quite a bit. And I mean, there's only so much of Pattinson's scowl that is fixed and giving you nothing beyond that, but the camera stays on it for a long time.
I do think that's I think that's purposeful. And I'm not going to, obviously it is, because it's there.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of the arc. This beginning is a Batman who said, I love hearing from his diary, which is right out of Batman Year
That was great. That was great.
And that he is, he's empty. This is also any actor, and I give Pattinson kudos, or his stuntman, for he spends far more time as the Batman in this film than he does as Bruce Wayne.
And without doing any spoilers, that narrative the vocal narrative,
it's right out there for the beginning, that
is important to the rest of the film. That has a payoff, and it's really good.
But he is a Batman just driven by vengeance, and I think this is a take that puts to bed the concept that Batman has to be psychotic to be doing what he's doing. He is empty at the beginning of this film. He is absolutely just driven by vengeance, but by the end, he is driven by something else far more important. And I think that if they do a second one, and that's not a guarantee, which is funny to say, because I think we're all playing a game, or Warner Brothers is playing a game with us, that we'll see more Bruce Wayne. We'll see a different portrayal of him.
I don't think it's a spoiler to say at one point he's looking at the very real realization that he may be done as Batman. And I think that it's played with a bit of relief.
Mm-hmm. He hasn't had a life, which of course is logical. We've seen all these badass comic stories over the years, and Batman Begins does this as well, right? Shows all the training and all that, and you think, this is really cool. But in reality, what has that done to a guy who, it's funny that for the past 2 weeks leading up to the Batman being released, I've seen a resurgence of this comment on Twitter over and over again. It's like if Bruce Wayne really wants to solve crime in Gotham, he'd be contributing to social programs, blah 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 blah. And I'm seeing all these comics historians and writers countering, like in the 70s he did. He's running all kinds of charities and foundations, and that's even a joke back to Batman 66 of the Wayne Foundation exists. And this is the first time we're seeing him come to realize that that part is important too, but no one has ever really shown him.
He hasn't had the perspective to
Right.
to realize it.
Right. So even as I'm saying this aloud, again, it's driving me back to want to watch it again.
Yeah.
But again, at home, so that again, it like the last, I'd say maybe 45 minutes of this film, again, no spoiler, it could have ended, and the last 45 minutes could maybe not have been there, and I still would have been satisfied with the story it presented. And yet I don't think it wouldn't have completed the arc.
Well, there's so much in the last 45 minutes, which is what a large portion of the audience came to see.
No, I understand that, but
yeah. I agree with you.
The appreciation of it is, this is the first time that we have seen that part of the description of Batman is the Dark Knight detective.
Yes.
Even if the mysteries are simple, I think it was very funny. We walked out because John Oliver did a piece a few weeks ago during his break complaining about the Da Vinci Code and how the riddle was like, the answer to the riddle was Apple, A-P-P. Like it takes an hour and a half in this movie and that novel to figure out that the answer is Apple. And it's like, all right, I was pretty much on track with Batman solving the Riddler's riddles. They weren't like hugely difficult.
I think
but at least he figured it out in 10 seconds, It's at least
I did 80% of them right before they said it on the screen. There were only a couple that stumped me.
Right. And so, but at least we're seeing them follow the clues and put things together and come back and like go, okay, suddenly words mean something different, and not in the, if you watch Burt Ward with the Riddler's riddle, like, a pigeon with a machine gun or whatever it is, you laugh, but this never feels that way. And there's, that at least it's on they bothered to plot it out, to plot a mystery and not just, and not an unfair one. It is a puzzle throughout. It's smart. And I see some more people who joined. So certainly if you have any comments, intake there. But let's talk about these actors who are taking on iconic characters. First, Robert Pattinson.
Yeah. And again, a big surprise that he carried it off, because when we heard Pattinson originally, there was a lot of question marks.
Not for me. I think I can stand by that. You can go back to Fanboy.
I know.
But no, but I thought he would
I'm talking about a lot of people who
I understand
online and such. But he was fine. It was not a Batman or a Bruce Wayne like I think we've ever seen before. No, and that's not saying it wasn't. It was still true to the Batman role, but he was played much differently.
Well, and you got to think, it's just like, this is a Bruce Wayne who witnessed his parents murdered in 2002. And so what does a kid growing up in this 21st century culture, what does the Batman look like to him as he forms that around him? So there's that. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. There was a lot of, I won't call it a smolder, but there was a lot of just kind of empty stare, but that's it. This is a guy, you are presented very early on with a character who is clearly a parallel, I should say, or, that flashes back. Also credit to this film for not showing us Thomas and Martha's murder, but putting it in a different context.
We get other things that are pretty awful. I mean,
but no, you know what? But here's the thing. I don't think that it's a reliable history either.
Okay.
And this film is not the first to play around with that past, because clearly Grant Morrison did that. that way back when whoever was Bill Finger did Thomas Wayne wore the bat suit first, kind of, they did a flashback story like that. But Andrew Vox, if you remember that, who passed away just a few weeks ago, who was an incredible writer, novelist, but also advocate and I think investigator for child abduction and child sex trafficking. He wrote a novel, and I'm blanking on the name of it, but I have it somewhere in a box in the garage, in which he had basically recast that the murder of the parents was because Martha was an activist and had gotten too close to a trafficking ring, and so they killed the Waynes to shut them up. And you go, yes, that backstory is ripe for some reinterpretation in every year, but again, for 2022, where they put Thomas and Martha is very interesting. And where they would have fit in American history at that point too is very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm okay with that. I think there's more to be done with the character, and I think Pattinson will, if he plays it again. And again, we don't know that for sure. But Andy Serkis, because to me, that was the left field casting.
Yeah.
For Alfred.
Yeah.
So what did you think?
He reminded me a lot of, I don't remember the actor's name, but the actor who played Alfred on Gotham. Same kind of
Sean Pertwee.
Yeah.
Son. Yeah.
Right. But the same kind of, like, you can see this guy. And at one point he says, I could teach you about fighting, but I couldn't teach you much else about family or whatever. And that's kind of like an Alfred that we've gotten a couple of times more recently. And Pennyworth, of course, leads into that character in that manner. And
I think there were hints of that in Jeremy Irons' portrayal as well. It just didn't really get developed. It didn't get developed, but it's 100% in Jeff Johns' Batman Earth 1 graphic novel series, which, I think those are great. If you want to go back,
that's an absolute wonderful book. Yeah.
People called this out as owing a lot to The Long Halloween. It does, but it also owes a lot to Batman Year One, and it also owes a lot to Darwin Cook. In the portrayal of Selena.
Yeah,
is as much Darwin Cook as it is Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli.
Definitely.
So let's get to Paul Dano, an interesting take on the Riddler, who to me is always, outside of Frank Gorshin, a difficult character to.
Well, look at the ones. It's never the same character twice. So we've had Frank Gorshin, then we had Jim Carrey, who was kind of an homage.
Well, let's not forget John Astin in the middle in season 3.
Okay. Okay, fine. Okay, fine.
The Mustachioed Riddler.
But the Jim Carrey one, which was like an over-the-top version of the Gorshin character. And then this one, this is more akin to the Gotham Riddler.
Yes.
And then the same kind of, like, really dark, motivational, very selfish. Yeah.
It's not quite the Marilyn Manson take that was in the Batman animated series, not Batman the animated series, which had a more straightforward thing. It is interesting. I'm not sure, I'll be honest that I'm not sure that from my years of reading Riddler in comics, like him being portrayed as an out and out killer, because I think there's something fun about him that's gone from this portrayal. I didn't like the costume, and yet in context of seeing the film, and it's not a spoiler about the costume either, because it's all over the place.
Right.
But it's chilling. It's accurate.
And it's something you could cobble together from parts you could find.
And there's no other character that it could have been than the Riddler from the way it was written. Yeah. And I would have been upset if they had called it something else.
Yeah.
So we're good with that. I'm not a big Paul Dano fan, but I thought he was excellent. Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle, never called Catwoman, though very obviously, called out.
Yeah,
That she's
my
headed there.
reaction was the same to you. She was like made to, or if they gave Batman Year One to a casting agent and said, "Find me this person," and then they gave Batman Year One to the costuming people, and it was just, and
Well,
it's Batman.
they also handed Selena's big score. It's very clear that's where the Darwin Cook stuff and the hairstyle. There was more to her than was allowed to be in Batman Year One,
Yeah,
and I think a lot of
she's
that comes.
almost a skinhead in Batman Year One, isn't she?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and they gave her a closer relationship to the mystery.
yeah.
And that's all we can say. I think at this point, other than she was great, I hope the character returns, and it could easily as well be spun out into a Catwoman film that
Oh,
takes that.
I did love the mention of Bloodhaven.
Yes, yes. Which always cracks me up. Like, really, who the hell goes to live in a major city called Bloodhaven? But
It's got to be named after the Bloodhaven. I had never really when Dick Grayson went off to be in Bloodhaven, that was when I lost that thread of Batman. So I don't know the origins of Bloodhaven. I imagine it's the Bloodhaven family.
Yeah, I don't know because I think Nightwing just went there. So Burritos, who is Family Planet co-founder Michael Goodson, do you think the teen boy that was shown was setting up Robin? And that's in the first 20 minutes, right? Or was he just part of the Sins of the Father theme? And I don't know because that, we walked out of this and
Actually, when you said teen boy at the beginning, I was thinking of the kid who was only half of his face was painted.
Okay, and maybe that's who
And I was thinking Drake.
I think that I was actually thinking it was Duke.
Yeah.
Duke, who becomes the Signal in comics. And
yeah,
that's it, because my wife asked me,
Drake.
do you think
That was he's going to be Drake. He's going to be a great singer.
He is called Drake now.
Is he?
Tim Drake's identity is now Drake because you can't. Robin and Red Robin was too confusing. So I would be intrigued to see that. Matt Reeves is playing Coy, and because my problem is if you introduce a Robin who's already an adult, like you did with Chris O'Donnell, then he looks, why is he the boy wonder? Michael did clarify he meant the mayor's son at the beginning. And
I was happy that they let Pattinson's character be hands off on that kid. He gave him some distance looks and stuff, but he never went over and said it's going to be okay, because he's got no reason to say it would ever be okay.
No, he doesn't. So I don't know. That is a character that maybe could become Robin. I just don't know if Robin, the way we all expect Robin to be, would play particularly well in today's environment. In a realistic take on Batman, honestly, I mean, it's child endangerment, and there's no way around it.
Totally.
Someone would ask, would talk that. So, I want to get to the Penguin because Colin Farrell, the character that I was most annoyed that they had cast Colin Farrell as, was like, holy crap! I saw no Colin Farrell behind that mask, behind those prosthetics. No, seriously though.
Yeah.
It was just like I was trying, and I'm like, nope, I can't see a single thing that is a Colin Farrell tick, a Colin, anything that was familiar about it.
The voice was entirely original.
This was a fully fleshed out. Maybe it's not the way I hear Oswald Cobblepot in my head, but then that's because, this is the thing, and we'll get to it. Whose take on, which version of the Penguin is it, where I remember a guy who was a character who was into Shakespeare, and that's one of the things, he was very cultured.
This was a street fighter. He had that scar running across his face. I mean, he's been through some rough times before. He worked his way up. which
Yeah.
again is kudos back to Gotham as far as creating some great characters along the lines that surprised us in that
And that's one
world.
of my favorite parts of Gotham too. Yes,
Yeah,
that portrayal. And Colin Farrell has agreed to be in a spin-off miniseries, not sure how many episodes, for HBO Max, which is, so
interesting.
there will be a Cobblepot series. There were two announced like a year ago. One was Cobblepot, although that came after. The first one announced was that they were going to do a Gotham PD series. That
Yeah,
has now been put by the wayside and replaced by, they're going to do an Arkham series. So about the asylum, the history of the asylum. What I find funny about the reasons why, now Matt Reeves has been saying in interviews, is there was an artistic difference with HBO Max and Warner Brothers and the showrunner they brought in for Gotham PD, which was going to be set like a year before Batman's first appearance, to follow one corrupt cop and his fall. And now that I say it out loud, I sort of get that this maybe is not the time to talk about. Well, no, it is the time to talk about police corruption, but Warner Brothers didn't want to do that. They didn't want an unlikable character at the center,
right.
So they're replacing it with
The
Arkham
asylum.
to talk about all the homicidal maniacs.
And the pitch for Arkham was basically, we have an insane asylum full of criminals, and each week someone escapes.
Yes. I would love them to go back to, just because it would be such poetic justice for Dan Slott, who's one of his major writing assignments for DC before he went to Marvel and really took off, was an Arkham Asylum miniseries, which is fantastic. If you can find it, I'm not even sure if it's collected, but it's a beautiful, great book. He created like 8 or 9 new villains for it, and went into the inner workings of Arkham. I'd be fascinated by that. Also, Grant Morrison's and Dave McKeon's Arkham Asylum. The thing is, no matter how you slice Arkham, it's an unsettling story to tell. And, it's, I'm going to say that the joke you made, and then Brian echoes it, it's a Freak of the Week style. I don't think so. And the reason being, I don't think they're committing anything more than really a limited series, which The Batman would have worked for me as a limited series. You wouldn't have gotten Robert Pattinson, maybe, but that's the thing, is I would have been happy if you'd given me 3 episodes of The Batman and told that story over 3 weeks. I certainly, I don't think the pacing would have changed. I could have appreciated it a little, although maybe not, because audiences now, when you have a cliffhanger, it's like, get to it. I mean, if you're watching Discovery right now, you're like, for God's sake, just show what the alien race looks like. That's what would be happening. Throw the batarang. We'd be screaming, and every week we'd be seeing that on Twitter. Just throw the goddamn batarang. So
actually, I was thinking my favorite version of Arkham is in the Batman Arkham video game.
Yeah.
And it's what's effective about it is that scene where you go in and you're just going down the corridors, and
my mistake the first time I played that was on PC. I believe Michael Goodson gave me my copy of Batman for my birthday, of Batman Arkham, and I was late at night on my laptop playing it with headphones on so as not to bother anybody else, and I had to stop.
Until you screamed.
Maybe. It is a good version. And that's got a good Riddler too. And that's voiced by Wally Wingert, who is also a pretty good Frank Gorshin impersonator. So, Frank Gorshin lives on. Of course, in all this, we've got these spin-offs coming. Michael Keaton will be Batman in 2 projects this fall. He will be in The Flash, where they reset that mainstream universe, I guess, and then in Batgirl, which will finally finish the merging of the Snyderverse take and whatever the new vision is, in which Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne was Batman all along, and we'll never see Ben Affleck again. And
I'll give you my pitch for that. I'd like to see them throw everyone a curve, bring Sheila Payback. Okay.
No, I get what he's saying.
Oh,
It was
I
a
understand.
special,
Right. Yeah, I
it
know
was
what
a
it is.
special message just for
Yes, it's
me.
just for you. So the where was I?
Well, before you give the pitch, I will clarify. It's the
Okay.
Batgirl movie, and I'm
Right.
not entirely positive. I mean, Warner is claiming it's going to be on HBO Max, but they were developing Blue Beetle as an HBO Max movie, and that has been bumped up to being theatrical. So depending on how much hunger movie theaters have for more Bat product, if you will, I wouldn't be surprised if Batgirl shows up as a theatrical release first.
So
But it's not currently in the cards.
Here's my pitch, which actually is back to the Flash. I'd like to see the Flashpoint with Michael Keaton as Thomas Wayne.
I really hate to break this to you. Despite your powers of being able to predict, the Flash is finished filming. They've gone through 17.
Oh no, I'm talking. Yeah, okay.
They've gone through 17,000 directors and 42 million scripts, including one by Ezra Miller and one by Grant Morrison. I think actually
I was actually talking about the show that just got another season.
Oh, but didn't they already do? I mean, didn't they blow?
They did a Flashpoint, and they
blew Flashpoint at the beginning of season 2.
Right.
And then the Flash movie is a variation on Flashpoint. You can see in the trailer,
right.
Both versions of the trailer are on Fanboy Planet, where you have two Ezra Millers standing side by side and Supergirl behind them in the Batcave, and you have Michael Keaton's voice speaking. I do think Jeffrey Dean Morgan would have been a more effective Thomas Wayne, and at one point he was attached to be that version of the Batman in the first version of the Flash, which would have been Flashpoint as well. They've never veered from that idea because from the second they released Batman v Superman, they knew something was going wrong. They just couldn't put their fingers on what. So there's that. And the CW is developing not a spin-off, but yet another take, which is Gotham Knights. I don't know if it'll be ready for the fall this year, but it's definitely in production, in development. And that will be that Batman has been killed. And it's the descendants who are of the Bat family who are trying to carry on the name. So it'd be interesting to see. I don't have a problem. I think that with all this, and also there's a Gotham Knights video game coming too. So I think they're going to be similar but not alike. If that makes sense. That sounds like a Sontaran. Alike, yes, but similar, no. And because Batman is many things. And as I was reminded by somebody tweeting back at me, there are, the Lego Batman was a great film that I will revisit again and again. The Batman movie that I will watch anytime is Batman 66. And they couldn't be farther from what we just saw this past weekend. And yet I remember coming out of Batman Begins and going, yep, that's it. And now in hindsight, going the Nolan trilogy, it didn't age as well for me.
Yeah.
I still love The Dark Knight. I think most of what I love about The Dark Knight is Heath Ledger's performance. I would go, I like Batman 89, but to your point, when I first got it on VHS and went to the midnight release party at Tower Video in Mountain View, not in Campbell, and bought that VHS and put it in the VCR, I made sure I was fast forwarding through the Kim Basinger scenes because I thought Vicky Vale, most of her scenes were just uninteresting. So
I'd say that I think it would surprise you. Probably the one Batman that I could, whenever it comes on or whenever I expose to it, I will sit down and watch it all the way through, is the Tim Burton first Batman. And I think the reason for that is that it cuts across all the possible, it's got flavor of a serious Batman and the craziness of Batman 66. It's got all those great Prince songs in it, which really doesn't have much to do with the character, but
and most of them you can't hear, but that's okay. I mean,
I will watch that
movie.
I will watch the museum scene
which does play Party Man. Yes,
with
it's a
Party
great.
Man and yeah,
No, there are
that
great sequences in that,
yeah,
and I would say that for me, Batman Returns is the strongest one because it's the only of the Burton stuff. It's also one of Burton's strongest films because it's one of the very few where everything actually adds up. Like anything that the Chekhov's gun goes off. It's all tied together. It might
right.
be unbelievable to you because
You think?
yeah, but it adds up. Nothing is wasted in that one. Whereas I think there are, I remember walking out of Batman. I saw it twice on its first day. I drove down. I saw it at the Chinese theater, and on opening day. And my friend that I was going with actually bought tickets for the 2:30 a.m. showing. So
Oh,
I pulled into LA. He said, "We've got tickets. Take a nap now." We went to the 2:30 a.m. showing, and then another friend was joining us for the 2 p.m. matinee. So we saw it twice and tried to pretend as long as we could that we hadn't seen it. And then we sat down in the theater, and he went, "You sons of bitches, you saw it already." I said, yes, we did. We're sorry. We're sorry. But loved it, but still saw the flaws. And yet it's definitely a movie that rewards rewatching because there's just so much detail going on. And I feel
yeah.
the same way about Batman Returns. I think I do love the Lego Batman movie. This is my thing. As Rick and I were talking ahead of time, and I've said this to a few other film reviewer friends. I don't want to necessarily say critics, but people that run other podcasts and stuff. Is I've really come to believe, especially when people complain about movies getting shut out of Oscar nominations, etc., is none of that matters. What matters is if a few years later you still think fondly of this film, then that's a good film. And I almost don't want to ever actually review movies right after I've seen them anymore because I haven't had time to sit with them. I haven't been able to look back in the mirror and think, oh, that was stupid, or that was better than I thought, or I changed. Like, Derek McCaw seeing Vertigo at age 16 versus Derek McCaw seeing Vertigo at age 30 was very
Right,
different. At age 40 was
right.
very different. And I
You
feel the
probably
same way
slept
about
better the last couple of times.
maybe, yeah. Yeah. I mean, but you appreciate things differently, and that's why I'm slowly going back through all the movies that came out during the pandemic and reviewing that I saw and going from memory because that's what stuck.
I think
Lego Batman stuck, but I haven't watched it since. But
I
that's more because I rarely watch anything a second time anymore.
we're of an age where we actually had years/decades between cinematic presentations of our fandom. Whereas people who are, in their 30s, even 40s nowadays, have never had a point where they weren't looking forward to the next movie that was going to come out in 9 months, a year, and they're going to be exposed to this stuff over and over again. And when they get a new movie, it's slightly changed, but we went through periods where there just was no media.
Well, and I want to say, like to that point, you're right. We are a highly recyclable society. We pop culturally, that Kid McCaw, who is not a kid anymore, he turns 18 next week. He was very angry when Ben 10, his favorite show when he was 4, has already gone through a reboot. And I'm like, well, welcome to it, son.
Yeah,
It's like, but I mean, to some extent we did see those things. We weren't aware because it was like, there was a 1966 Batman, then that went through 1968. At the same time, an animated Batman show started. Most of it was Saturday morning, and that's the difference.
right.
And then we saw Super Friends, which was yet a different version of Batman. And there's like 3 or 4 different takes on Super Friends in which the level of seriousness changed, and the breadth of the adventures changed. And again, it was just that this has become adult pop culture. There's part of me that's very torn that I don't think that this version of Batman is appropriate for kids, and I don't think we've made many. Maybe Justice League the worst of it. Although I like Ben Affleck, that's my sadness. I've said that too.
Yeah.
I think Ben Affleck was great. He was never given the opportunity to play Batman, just as I think that Henry Cavill, and I know people will fight me on this. It's like I think he's perfectly fine as Superman. He's never gotten to play Superman the way he even wants to, because he's a fanboy. He effing knows.
The scripts weren't written by people who love the character.
No. And, that's the point, is this Batman doesn't have to kill someone to realize that killing is bad. And it's just like, how could you be see, but that's it. We walked out of Man of Steel and we did like an hour and a half podcast just talking about all the things we liked about it, and a few things that were like, yeah, we got a little issue, but those issues grew to me over the years. And I'm not repudiating my feeling walking out. I was just thrilled that a Superman film didn't get it terribly wrong. And then in hindsight, well, it got it wronger than I thought when I first walked out, and that's it. I said, like, I like The Dark Knight. I like The Dark Knight Rises when I saw it. I would never go back to that movie again because my problems with it have just grown too large. Yeah. But I would watch The Dark Knight again if, like, my son asked, hey, can we watch it? But I think those days are past too. I don't think my son's going to call me up and say, hey, Dad, let's have a movie night, Yeah. So, sorry, if you want to cue Cats in the Cradle, we cannot afford the rights to that song, so please don't. But that's the point. I'd also like to say, when we say we've gone through, we're of an age, I'm officially changing the title of this podcast to Grumpy Old Fanboys. Write in if you want to. Try not to be grumpy, but to be aware. I still think we've also left out Batman the Animated Series. And there's a whole generation for whom Kevin Conroy is Batman. And there are episodes of that show that you'll watch. I'll hold that up against any other Batman portrayal. And
by the way, grumpyoldfanboys.com is available. So just so you know.
All right, write in. Tell us, should we rebrand at this point? I mean, what the hell? We've been going on for 22 years. The podcast is 15 years old. Should we rebrand at this point? I mean, we just started season 2.
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah.
There's not a lot. We haven't got a lot into the old fanboys.
Yeah. We're grumpy old fan men, damn it. Anyway, I don't know what I am. I'm too tired for any of it. So, at this point, we've talked about some comics. I'd say maybe if somebody walked out of this one or just wanted to find something, let's point them to one or two really good We've talked about Batman Year One. Let's make sure we've acknowledged them all. Batman Year One was fantastic. There's a Year Two also, but it's by a different team. It's pretty good. It doesn't stand as classic to me.
Year One is kind of a surprise, and you don't get that in Year Two, right? So
although we did in this, I would say I would walk away from The Killing Joke because I think that's too dark. I wouldn't go for the Three Jokers. I would go for what else did we say? What else have we mentioned? Oh my gosh, have I forgotten so much so quickly? I know. The Long Halloween, mostly because the Long Halloween art is so gorgeous. I mean, Tim Sale, it's not what you'd expect. Although Robert Pattinson is probably the first actor who looks like Tim Sale might have drawn him. Yeah, and to play Batman, and so I don't know if the story and the mystery of that one holds up as well. I just think it's the art. We've got a couple of questions, so let's see. First, I do want to say, absolutely, Paul Pope's Batman Year 100. That is really cool. It's a very different take. And I think, and also because this gives me a chance to call out a comics professional who he didn't get the due he should have when he lived. He passed away a few weeks ago. Brian Augustine wrote Gotham by Gaslight, which essentially set off Elseworlds, and is also just an incredible story putting Batman in the 1890s, and the animated adaptation isn't bad, but it doesn't hold a candle to that graphic novel. So there is a question
While
there.
we're
Yeah,
there, because that's kind of a real departure. When we were talking about doing this show, you said two things to me: comics you've read recently, and you said Batman's that you love and you go back
yeah.
to. And oddly enough, this week someone mentioned a book that I already have, but all of a sudden was obsessed with getting a copy of it and reading it again. You would never guess this in a million years, but this is the book that I went out and bought.
Bruce Wayne, Agent of Shield, Amalgam.
The
How much?
Amalgam.
How much? It's reversed in the screen, but how much did you have to pay for it? It's still reversed.
I got it. Actually, it's in great shape. I think I paid about $7 for it.
That's not as bad as I thought it'd be.
Yeah, it was.
I mean,
It was. I think it was 13 with shipping.
the reason being, of course, that it is Bruce Wayne, Agent of Shield, is the Amalgam universe when DC and Marvel played nicely together, and they, for one, I don't know, it was 3 months long. They had this event where they
They
crossed.
put all the other books on hold.
They fused the characters, and there's some really cool things out of there. That was a great one. That really
Yeah.
was. Wolverine merged with Batman to become Dark Claw. They didn't always add up. They didn't always make sense. Like, they couldn't have coexisted.
The
But it didn't
side
matter.
characters are wonderful in this, because like you have the Green Skull, which is a cross between the Red Skull and Brainiac, and then down here you have Madame Hydra, who's obviously Talia al Ghul, and Madame Hydra, and a little bit of the Iron Maiden.
Okay, so I'm going to say that if you can find that one, that is a great read. If you can find any of those amalgams, Super
They're a lot
Soldier
of
was
fun.
great. Superman and Captain America. The
Yeah,
question that came, and I want to call it out, Jay Hartlove, who's got a novel coming out in May, I think, and I'm blanking on the name. I keep meaning to pre-order it. I need to do that. But he's asked, when you say that you later see what a film got wrong, do you mean you thought of missed opportunities? Well, yes and no. I try when I review a film to not talk about the film I wish it was, because I'm not in that place. I didn't make those choices. I can only talk about what didn't work for me. And maybe it's even wrong to say what it got wrong, because clearly, like, I appreciate from a distance. I've come to appreciate even Zack Snyder's Justice League. I wouldn't watch it again, but I know that he's got a bunch of fans that absolutely love it. So for them, he didn't do anything wrong. For me, he did. We have a fundamental disagreement on how those characters should be interpreted, but Warner Brothers didn't come to me. They didn't ask me. Nobody asked me, like when Jeff Johns redid Shazam, well, that's not my Billy Batson, but it kind of works on screen. It doesn't work in the comics for me. But in the film Shazam that came out with Zachary Levi and Asher, what is his last name? Anyway, but regardless, the kid who plays Billy Batson, who is, I think, he's good. It plays much better on screen, so I like Shazam. But I think, like I said, The Dark Knight Rises is a missed opportunity by many accounts. From behind the scenes, it's rushed because of a writer's strike. They kind of finished because Heath Ledger died. It really seems to me, when you see The Dark Knight, that Heath Ledger's Joker was supposed to return in The Dark Knight Rises, and then he unfortunately passed away. So the plans changed. So it's hard for me to say, missed opportunities.
Yeah.
And thank you, Jay. I knew that if I said it, you'd type it. The Insane God is his new novel. So we'll have a link to that on the Fanboy Planet page from Amazon. And if you can't find that, pre-order that at your local brick and mortar. By all means, order it through us. And then both Jay and the Fanboy Planet podcast get some money. So I get pennies. Jay, hopefully, as the author, gets
some dollars.
Dimes. At least dimes. I don't know what publishing's like right now. I just got an email saying I got a royalty payment for residuals for I Was Flesh Gordon, and it's $25. So woo-hoo-hoo, I'm rich. I'm a happy miser. But anyway, so good. Look for look for that. That was a good one. Your choice there, Agents.
Oh, that was the one I just happened to have picked up. That wasn't my choice for what you said. What have you read recently that?
Okay,
that
what have you read
matters?
recently? Because we haven't talked comics in a while.
Okay.
What is the one?
So
thing?
I'm gonna. This is the She-Hulk returning. Usually put me in a bigger screen.
I'll do it if you want.
Sure, just for a second. So we got She-Hulk coming back.
Oh, it's 1 and 2.
It's the first 2 issues of She-Hulk, which is bringing Jessica back to the characterization closer to when Peter David did the story.
Jennifer
Wall.
There's so many Jessicas. Yes.
Yeah. With a we just came out of her being Hulk for so long in the Avengers, and kind of like a moronic Hulk at that. And it's got some fun in it. It's got a lot of Marvel history in it. We have the return of Jack of Hearts, who is returning not only in this book but also I saw him in another book. The new Silver Surfer book, Surfer Redemption. Anyway, Jack of Hearts was a great favorite of mine, and Jack of Hearts has shown up in this book as well. So if you loved, and you should love, the old Peter David She-Hulk, but may have thought it was a little too sexist, it was at the time. I think that there were a lot of rope skipping jokes and other things about that character. That is toned down quite a bit. She is a businesswoman. She is reestablishing her law practice, and it all works. It's working for me. I'm enjoying this book.
Which is one of those that's setting up that, of course, we'll have a She-Hulk series on Disney Plus later this year.
Yes,
and with that, it's described as a sitcom about her being a lawyer, and the hijinks that ensue with turning into a 7-foot green muscle woman.
And Talia. I can never pronounce her last name. Starts with an M. The actress who's playing She-Hulk.
Yes, Tatiana.
She's the one from Orphan
Black. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's why we are grumpy old fanboys, because we our memories are going. We've got pandemic brain. It's been stressful. I do want to call out because I did read it through the app, but finally Marvel's been able to overcome the paper shortage. And speaking of Disney Plus connections, that the Lemire and the Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood run on Moon Knight is finally coming out in a trade paperback complete collection. That I think is where the series that starts March 31st will lean heavily into that take, which is more supernatural, more dealing with the mental illness head on. It's unclear what's real and what's not. So I think that's worthwhile, but it's not the collection I bought. I'd say that the thing that it's out of sight and heavy, because of course Rick Bretschneider has convinced me that the weight of a book is no hindrance to reading it. No. So I picked this up. It's the Milestone Compendium Volume 1.
Wow.
Which is like the first year of all the Milestone books. And I think because outside
the first year of the first run, or the first year
of the first run.
First run, okay.
Because they've been out of print for I don't know how long.
Oh, yeah.
It's printed on a little lower grade of paper than these usually do, but that's not actually a downgrade. That actually, kind of recreates the grittiness, and I mean it again as a positive, of the way these books originally appeared, and they were drawn to be that way. So, one, I think that people know Static because there was an animated series. Sure. He's the best known out of Milestone. Hardcore fans know, and they probably paid attention and watched the panel on both DC fandoms about the returns. They have recently returned, and Blood Syndicate's coming soon. I'm not so sure I'm into the modern takes, but these are all incredibly great characters who deserved better than they got. They were very much ahead of their time in terms of where the culture was, or I shouldn't say where the culture was. You know, the audience didn't find it as well as they should have. And so I think, this is an opportunity to just take the fire hose of why Milestone is great. Even, I'm not a big Hardware fan. He was kind of the jerk version of Iron Man.
Yep.
But of course, then Tony Stark became the jerk version of Iron Man too. So I look forward to revisiting that. But in addition to Static, which I loved, Icon and Rocket were fantastic.
Yeah.
Blood Syndicate was a fantastic book. I didn't ever read Zombie, so I'm looking forward to reading that take, which was another one that was revived for the New 52. So, it's reasonable. I like they're calling it a compendium instead of an omnibus because it is paperback. I have become a stickler for the bottom shelf of my bookcases, that an omnibus must, in order to be an omnibus, be a hardcover. Though that's not strictly true anymore, But
it's good to put the omnibuses. Living in California, it's good to put the omnibuses in the bottom shelf.
Oh no, absolutely.
The shelves weighted properly. Yeah.
Oh yes. That's where my omnibuses are. Yes.
In the earthquake zone. Yeah.
In the earthquake zone, a lot of horror there. A lot of.
I've got another one.
Oh, I didn't say to you, but all right, I snuck the Moon Knight thing in there.
Yes.
So
okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So this is almost a PSA, a public service announcement.
I know what you meant.
Well, maybe other people didn't, dear. So the this
Your
author,
white daddy drinks. Okay, go ahead.
This author is kind of known for this type of story. This is King of Spies, and the storyline. This is Mark Millar, and
I don't know that artist.
Matteo Solera. It's good art, wonderful. I'm trying to keep the shine off.
You're doing a good job. Part of the Netflix line. Does it have the Netflix branding on the back?
It does. It does. So the base pitch on this is an incredible young spy gets old and is brought back out of training and out of retirement somewhat, and has to go active as a spy, and he's got his own motivation for doing it. But it's like every Millar spy book, so
you're warning away.
It's so much like so many of his other books, that what was new and interesting and kind of refreshingly so, this has been done to death a little bit. And I would say, if you want to read a fresh and interesting book about an old spy who comes back into the cold, Velvet is.
Oh, Velvet's great by Ed Brubaker.
Velvet is astounding, and it's a wonderful, great story, great art, and it's about a secretary who becomes a spy and then gets betrayed.
I love Velvet, but also, public service announcement. You can't go wrong reading an Ed Brubaker book. You just can't.
Yeah.
No matter which of his artistic collaborators it is. Although, he works with some of the best. So great stuff. So cool. That's good. We kind of, caught up a little bit. I admit I haven't been able to get to the comic shop in about 3 weeks. So, there we go. By all means, pre-order The Insane God. And the description sounds good. So thanks, Jay Hartlove. Thanks, Brian Kent. Thank Michael Goodson for watching live. Anybody else who was watching who just didn't comment, I appreciate you too. I know, especially right now in these times, we need to have conversations about things that maybe aren't so important in the long run. But comics are important in terms of escape, and it's okay to need that. So thank you for paying attention to this. And of course, if you want to join the conversation or you have any questions, comments, compliments, commentary, criticism, write into editor@fanboyplanet.com. Thank you. I'm
just
Derek.
A second. Just a second. Don't say it yet, because I figured out our lag problem. And for you viewers at home, the problem is that even though Derek and I are having give and take, there's still a little bit lag. So we were trying to sing or do something, coordinated a limerick or something. We wouldn't be in sync. But I figured out a way. It doesn't matter, and that is what we'll do is you'll say, I'm Derek McCaw, da da da, and I'll say, and I'm Rick Brett Snyder, and I will say, reminding you to, and I'll say, use your powers, and you say, only for good. So
I
we
don't say only for good.
For good. Okay.
Yes. I mean, it's right there on the banner. Go ahead.
Yes.
I'm Derek McCaw, editor-in-chief of FanboyPlanet.com.
And I'm Rick Brett Snyder, reminding you to use your powers
for good. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on any Fanboy Planet videos. And remember, use your powers for good.